Kenneth Morrison had worked corners for 47 years. On the morning before the biggest fight of his life, the text came. He stared at the screen. The message was from Brandon Hayes, the fighter he'd raised since the boy was 6. "You're embarrassing me. Don't come tomorrow." For 20 seconds, the old man didn't move. His hand tightened around the phone until the screen dimmed.
Touch first, then breathe. Those 4 words will save you when nothing else can. 11 years. I said it 1,000 times. He never understood why I kept saying it.
The gym where he had shaped 4 world champions felt like a mausoleum. The only sound was the buzz of a dying fluorescent light. On the wall, a photograph of a young man with Brandon's eyes. The father who never saw his son fight.
You want to be champion? Learn to listen before you swing.
He didn't slam the door. That wasn't his way. But the click of the latch was louder than any bell. The fight was in 36 hours. Kenneth Morrison would not be there. 24 hours before the text, Brandon Hayes sat in his Manhattan penthouse, staring at a video call from Marcus Webb.
The brand audit is tomorrow, Brandon. Kenneth is a problem. He doesn't look the part on television.
He's been with me 11 years, Marcus.
And now you have a $14 million deal with Vertex. They want modern, flashy, aspirational, not an old man in a plain white polo.
The voice in my corner. It's always been his.
I've got Michael Vance ready. He'll bring the cameras. You just have to make the call.
Brandon picked up his phone and opened Kenneth's contact. He typed the message slowly, as if each letter cut into his own skin. "You are embarrassing me. Don't come tomorrow." He hit send at 6:11 p.m. and held his breath. It's done. The penthouse felt colder than a ring after the final bell. He had won the argument, but somewhere in Newark, a 68-year-old man was reading the same words and packing a duffel bag. In his cramped Newark apartment, Kenneth opened a duffel bag that had traveled to 4 world title fights. Tonight, it carried only silence.
I promised you I'd watch over him. I ain't breaking that promise, even now.
He folded the plain white corner polo and placed it at the bottom of the bag, next to a towel he had soaked with sweat and loyalty for a decade. He walked down the steps of his building into the damp Newark night. He did not look back.
Champ! The cameras are gonna love this energy tomorrow. Vertex wants viral moments. We'll give him a show. Forget that, old man. You are the future.
The voice I used to hear before a fight isn't here, just noise.
When you knock him out in 2, I want you to point right at this camera.
Touch first, then breathe. He used to say that before every fight. Fight day arrived with no call from Newark. In the MSG locker room, Kenneth's chair remained folded against the wall. The sold-out garden roared as the champion walked to the ring. But Brandon's eyes kept drifting to the tunnel, searching for a face he knew wasn't coming. He's really gone. I did that. 50 miles away. A television flickered to life in a dim room. Kenneth Morrison sat down alone, a glass of water untouched on the table.
11 years, Brandon. I taught you how to listen. I hope you still can.
At center ring, Ortega met Brandon's stare with cold silence. The referee's voice was the last calm sound before the storm. The bell. Round 1. Brandon came out flat-footed, his jab slow, his head still heavy with the weight of a ghost. 30 seconds in, Ortega's left hook slammed into Brandon's temple. The champion's knees dipped, and the garden gasped. Move, move. Where's his voice? I can't hear it.
Move left. No. Slip right. Hands up, Brandon. Cut the angle. What are you doing?
When the bell ended round 1, Brandon turned the wrong way, his feet carrying him toward a corner that held only a folded chair. Michael had to grab his arm and pull him to the right one. In the corner, Michael's voice was a storm of noise. He shoved the stool aside and leaned so far through the ropes his feet nearly left the ground.
Double jab, then hook. No, slip first. Stay low. Keep your right hand up. What are you doing?
He's giving me nothing. Just words. Kenneth would have told me to breathe. The bell rang. Round 2. Ortega came in low, his eyes locked on the swelling temple, and the champion's feet were still swimming. A short right hand came from nowhere, clean and heavy, crashing into Brandon's temple. His body didn't just fall, It folded.
Get up. The canvas is cold. Get up.
The referee's hand cut the air. 1, 2, 3. The garden fell so silent, you could hear the canvas creak.
I can't hear him. Just noise. Just screaming.
At 6, he pushed up. His legs shuddered, his gloves hung like anchors, but he stood. Ortega circled, smelling the end.
He's not breathing. Come on, son. Remember.
Brandon straightened his body, but his balance was gone. The ring lights swung overhead like pendulums in a fever dream, and the canvas tilted beneath his feet.
Move left. No, slip right. Keep your hands up. He's coming straight on. Do something.
Kenneth's voice would have given me one clear thing. This is just noise bouncing off my skull.
Ortega's right hand found the temple with surgical precision. The champion never saw it coming, and his legs buckled instantly. His legs turned to water. The canvas rose up and caught him hard. The second knockdown in 2 brutal minutes.
Not again, not again. I can't find the air. It's all slipping away.
The referee's count was a distant thumping. The roar of the crowd felt like it was crushing his chest, pressing the breath out of him. But somewhere under the noise, a voice he had known his whole life began to surface, quiet and insistent.
Touch.
It wasn't the solution yet, but it was a crack of light in a very dark place. The canvas burned his knees, but the burning was far away. Inside, something else was taking shape. 11 years of muscle memory, drilled by a man who never asked for credit, began to fire in the dark.
The voice. I can hear it now. Under all this noise, I can hear it.
The referee's count rolled like thunder. 5, 6, but in the quiet of his own mind, another count was happening.
What did he say? He always said. The words are almost there. Right there.
He remembered the small gym in Newark, the smell of sweat and leather, Kenneth's hand on his shoulder.
You listen now, boy. This is the only thing that matters.
The word came like a whisper. Touch, it wasn't a command yet. It was an echo, but it was enough to make his right glove clench. 7. The referee's hand swept past his face. Brandon's knee stayed on the canvas, but his spine straightened. The world stopped tilting. He wasn't standing yet, but he wasn't beaten. And 50 miles away, an old man leaned so close to the television, his lips formed the first word. The count reached 8. Brandon pushed off the canvas, legs trembling, but his spine was ramrod straight. In the corner, Michael was a storm of noise, screaming orders that never reached the man they were meant for. Then, from the chaos, a voice rose. Quiet, aged, certain. The only voice he trusted. The words came clearly. Touch first, then breathe. As if the old man were right there.
Touch first, then breathe. 4 words. The foundation of everything I am.
His left hand snapped out in a measuring jab. Not to hurt, but to feel. The first honest connection he had made all night. Then he breathed. A slow exhale that pushed out the fear and the noise. The garden fell into a breathless hush. It was the silence that comes before a lightning strike. His right hand coiled, every muscle in his body recalling the physics of destruction. The punch was already in the air before anyone could take a breath. The right cross exploded from his shoulder, a cannon shot that no man could throw without first finding his center. It landed flush on Ortega's jaw, a devastating fusion of force and technique. Ortega's eyes lost their focus, and his knees buckled like a condemned building. His arms dropped to his sides, the fight draining out of him in a single terrible instant. He collapsed to the canvas, a broken marionette whose strings had been cut. The referee lunged forward, his hand already beginning the count, but everyone knew it was over. The garden erupted in a roar that rattled the ring lights and echoed down 8th Avenue. In his dim apartment, Kenneth leaned back in his chair, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. Brandon stood over his fallen opponent, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on the corner where Kenneth should have been. The victory was complete, but for the champion, the real fight had not yet begun. The referee waved his arms across the fallen challenger. The fight was over at 1 minute and 47 seconds of round 2. The crowd's roar was a physical force, but Brandon stood in the eye of the storm, unmoved. His eyes cut to the corner, where Michael was leaping onto the ring apron, screaming in triumph. Michael's celebration was a fireworks display. For Brandon, it was noise.
I did it. But he's not here to see it. The only man who really knows.
The gold belt was coming home, but it felt like borrowed property. Announcers scrambled for the post-fight interview, but Brandon was already walking away from the center of the ring.
Not without him.
The words were spoken low, but the microphone caught them. The production truck didn't know what to do with the silence that followed. He dropped through the ropes and into the backstage tunnel, leaving the belt, the noise, and the cameras behind. The service tunnel stretched ahead of him, lit by harsh fluorescent bars. Brandon's wet gloves left a trail of sweat on the concrete floor. A PR coordinator rushed toward him, already speaking about the broadcast. She raised a hand to block his path. He sidestepped her without a word, his gaze fixed on the exit sign at the end of the hall. In a narrow side passage, beneath the rumble of the crowd above, he pulled out his phone. The contact was still pinned at the top. Kenneth Morrison, the oldest number in his phone. The ringback tone was a distant, lonely sound. After the fourth pulse, the voicemail greeted him. He didn't leave a message. He just stared at the screen, the name burning into his eyes.
Touch first, then breathe. He gave me those words. Now I need to give him everything back.
He pocketed the phone and pushed through the heavy service door, the neon of 33rd Street crashing over him. The black car was already there, engine humming. He dropped into the back seat, and the city lights shrank in the mirror as he sped toward Newark. The phone buzzed in his lap. The caller ID read Marcus Webb. Brandon picked up without breaking his stare at the passing streetlights.
Brandon, we need to spin this. Walking out mid-interview was a disaster.
You are fired, Marcus. Effective right now.
What? You can't do that. The Vertex deal, your image.
You made me cut the man who raised me because he didn't look the part for a commercial. I nearly lost the fight because of you. I lost 11 years of loyalty because of you.
Brandon, listen. Let's be reasonable. We can fix this.
There's nothing to fix. You are done. Don't call me again.
He pressed the red button. The name Marcus Webb vanished from the screen, and with it, the noise of a life he no longer wanted. He set the phone face down on the seat. The car shot past the exit, for the Holland Tunnel, the dark water of the Hudson, opening to the left. He pressed redial. The ringback tone filled the car's silence, hollow and persistent. In the apartment, the phone vibrated on the armrest, the caller ID glowing Brandon in the dark. Kenneth let it ring.
I can't talk to him. Not tonight. Not yet.
The voicemail connected. Brandon ended the call without a word, his jaw tightening.
He's never picking up again unless I stand in front of him.
The car crossed the Passaic, the city's iron bridges giving way to streets he knew blind. They passed the old gym. The window was dark, but the sign still burned. The driver turned onto his block. The brick building hadn't changed. Its fire escapes rusted. Brandon stepped onto the sidewalk. The cold hit his face, and he felt his own pulse for the first time in hours. The second-floor light was on. He stood at the foot of the stoop, looking up. He climbed the worn stoop, each step a familiar groan under his weight. The door was painted shut, but he knocked. 3 hard strikes, knuckles raw. Inside, the scrape of a chair. Heavy footsteps drew closer, deliberate and slow. The door opened. Kenneth stood in the frame, his face unreadable. A man who had answered many bells.
I didn't come here to make excuses.
Kenneth said nothing. The silence between them carried every late-night call, every road trip, every prayer said over a canvas. Brandon's knees hit the landing floor. His head dropped, a champion kneeling before the only man who knew what he really was.
Touch first, then breathe. Those 4 words you drilled into me for 11 years. They saved my life tonight, but I threw you away.
His voice cracked. After 47 years of corners, I thought I'd heard every kind of plea. This one is different.
Kenneth did not yet speak, but his weathered hand, resting on the doorframe, began to tremble. Brandon, still on his knees, poured out the rest of his confession into the cold hallway air.
When I was on the canvas, it wasn't Michael's voice I heard. It was yours. Touch first, then breathe.
Kenneth's jaw tightened. A single tear traced the deep crease beside his nose.
47 years, and I still can't help but love this boy.
He stepped forward and placed his weathered hand on Brandon's shoulder.
Get up, son.
Brandon rose, but he didn't let go of the old man's arm. They stood in the doorway, the silence now a shared thing. Kenneth turned and walked into the small living room, motioning for Brandon to follow. The lamp illuminated the duffel bag, still packed by the couch. Brandon saw it, and his face crumpled. He sat heavily, head in his hands, as Kenneth lowered himself into the worn armchair opposite.
The press conference at the garden. They're expecting me. I won't do it alone. I need you there. Kenneth, please.
You want me in front of the cameras after you cut me loose for not looking the part?
I was an idiot. I let them tear me away from the only man who really had my back.
If I go with you, it's not for the cameras. It's because you are still that same kid to me.
Brandon nodded, and the two men rose together. Kenneth grabbed his coat from the hook without a word. The black car idled at the curb. Kenneth climbed into the back seat beside the champion, and the door closed with a solid thud. They didn't talk much on the drive back. The silence was no longer hostile. It was the quiet of two people who understood each other. As they approached Manhattan, the MSG marquee came into view, still blazing with the night's results. Brandon stepped out first, then reached back to help Kenneth. The flashbulbs found them instantly. They walked into the press room, side by side. The cameras already rolling. The ESPN set was lit, the chairs waiting. The interviewer leaned forward, microphone poised. The question that hung in the air was the one everyone wanted answered. What turned the fight around? Brandon stared at the camera lens and said nothing. The silence stretched. His eyes slid to Kenneth. The old man sat still, his hands folded as if they were in the old gym, not under studio lights.
After 47 years, the truth doesn't scare me, but I never wanted to be a headline.
Just say it. They fired him because he didn't look the part. They don't know what he really is.
The producer's voice came through his earpiece, urging him to move on. The champion didn't move. Then Kenneth shifted in his seat, and their eyes met. No words passed between them, but something did. Brandon turned back to the camera. His expression had changed from champion to something far more vulnerable. The microphone caught his first breath, a sound that traveled through the staid press room like a wind. And then he began to speak the words that would change everything.
Most of you don't know this. Kenneth Morrison was my father's cornerman.
A memory cut through the live feed. A young Kenneth, hands still strong, wrapping the fists of a fighter who had Brandon's eyes.
When my father was murdered in 2004, I was 6 years old. Kenneth took me into that gym and never let go.
On the stool beside him, Kenneth's composure broke. A single sob escaped his chest before he could cage it.
He raised me. He fed me, housed me, taught me everything I know. He never asked for a dime or a headline.
The press corps fell into a stunned silence. A veteran writer lowered his pen. The only sound was the hum of the cameras. On the gym wall in Newark, a photograph neither had explained. Now the whole world saw it for what it was.
47 years. And now they know. I never needed a plaque. Just this.
I fired him because a publicist told me he didn't look the part, and I almost lost the only family I have.
Kenneth wept openly, his shoulders shaking. But he did not try to hide his face. The tears were not of shame, but of a weight finally lifted. The broadcast was over, but Brandon had one more thing to do. He pulled Kenneth into a quiet office backstage and reached for his checkbook.
This is the full purse from tonight. 4.8 million. It's yours.
I can't take that, Brandon. That's your purse.
You gave me 11 years of your life. You raised me. This is just a piece of paper.
He began to write, his pen moving slowly across the check, as if each number was a weight he was lifting. Pay to the order of Kenneth Morrison. $4,800,000.
47 years. Nobody ever wrote me a check like this. I don't know what to say.
Brandon slid the check across the table, and Kenneth's weathered hand trembled as he lifted it. The older man tried to hand it back, but Brandon closed his hand around Kenneth's. Then he pulled him into a tight embrace. They held each other, the check crumpling between them, and for the first time in years, the weight of the world lifted from Kenneth's shoulders. The arena had emptied. In the shadow of the ring, Brandon and Kenneth sat alone on the ring apron, the championship belt lying forgotten on the canvas.
Why did you never tell anyone? All those years, you let people think you were just a trainer.
You were my son. I didn't need the world to know that.
The words hung in the silent arena, heavier than any championship belt ever could. Brandon's composure shattered. He covered his eyes with a trembling hand, shoulders shaking.
He never asked for credit. He just loved me.
Kenneth placed his weathered hand on the back of Brandon's neck, the same way he had done when the boy was 6 and afraid of the dark. They sat in silence. The only light coming from the exit signs, the ring behind them a monument to everything they had survived. Kenneth stared into the distance, the photograph on the gym wall alive in his memory, a young fighter who never got to see this night. They rose together, the belt left for later, and walked out into the Newark night, not as cornerman and champion, but as father and son. The old gym on Market Street was no longer quiet. The ring shook with footwork, and the heavy bags swung under fresh fists.
Look at this place. A year ago it was a graveyard. Now it's got a pulse.
Kenneth's weathered hands wrapped Brandon's knuckles with the same care he'd used since the boy was 6. They sat on the ring apron, watching the gym fill with young fighters, the air thick with hope. The front door creaked open. A boy no older than 8 stood in the entry, his eyes wide.
You looking for something, young man?
The boy didn't answer. He just stared at the ring. Kenneth smiled and walked over.
You want to learn? Come on in. First lesson's free.
Kenneth placed a hand on his shoulder, and the boy followed, his first steps into a new world. From the ring, Brandon watched, a quiet smile on his face. The gym door stayed open, the cycle unbroken. The last fighter had gone home. The heavy bags hung silent. The ring lights dimmed to a single glow. Kenneth Morrison stood before the wall of photographs, his eyes finding the one that had always mattered most. The young fighter in the frame smiled back at him, frozen in a moment from a lifetime ago.
He did good, brother. You'd have been proud of him.
The words mingled with the dust floating in the last ray of sun through the window. He didn't need an answer. The picture had been his witness for 47 years. He touched the frame, his weathered fingers tracing the edge, then turned away. The old man walked to the ring and rested his hand on the top rope. The canvas was cool, the echoes of 1,000 rounds pressed into the floorboards, and in the quiet of the gym, Kenneth Morrison felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace.